Okay, in the last video we set up our origin handles, so that should be responding in the way that you want your object to respond. So you want it to flip back, or whichever way you want that to be manipulated by your timeline here. So I'm going to go ahead and add my time for animation setup, and I am going to add 3 seconds to this one. Again, the video should be at least 3 and no more than 10 seconds long. For the FPS, it could be 15 depending on what materials you're using. You could also use 20. For this one, I'm going to use 15. So I'm just going to type this into the frames per second. I'm going to hit repeat here and then click OK. Now you'll see that I have a timeline here. Now really the way to kind of think of this is each object is going to have its own timeline. So things are going to kind of happen rather quickly here. I'm going to make sure that I have auto key on, and it is. I'm going to click outside to make sure it maintains the auto key on. I'm going to start with the sphere. That's what I'm going to be animating first. The way I like to do this is I actually like to go ahead and animate that to the certain point where it's going to touch the next object. Then I stop and concentrate on animating this object in time. So again, the mantra is keyframe. So I have to make sure that I add a keyframe here, scrub the timeline, and then move my object. You can see that again, here's the trajectory with keyframes. And I'm just going to bring that over. And again, working in all views, you want to make sure that that's actually coming in contact with the cube. And I could do this where I can actually scrub a little bit more and then, you know, kind of have it to where it's going to touch that cube. You can see that I went too far there, so that's why you need to work in different views. I'm just going to change my trajectory there. And right when it comes in contact, what I'm going to do is jump over to my second object here. That's going to come in contact there. So now I'm going to jump into my other object, and that at this certain time in my animation, so right where my ball has landed and hit this object is where I'm going to start animating this one now. So that's going to remain at 1.01 is what you can see here on my timeline. I'm going to make sure that I hit the add keyframe, and this is very important. You need to add a keyframe and then jump or scrub just one tick mark over and add another keyframe. This is going to maintain it in that area and make sure that it doesn't slide around when it starts animating. If you find that this is moving before the ball actually comes in contact, it's because you have not added that one keyframe and then another one right next to it. So again, that's rather important. Now that I have this keyframe set, I'm going to scrub my timeline and then slide this over. So that's going to be slid over, which will in then turn make this react, so the top cube, and I'm going to add a keyframe there. Scrub one tick mark over and then add another keyframe, and it's going to slide over just a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and hit or scrub my timeline, slide this over, and then rotate that so that it tilts. And again, scrub my timeline a little bit more, make that tilt around, and eventually it's going to fall on the ground. And I need to just kind of adjust it, making sure that it's not going to merge into the other object. and that it's up above the floor or ground plane. So now if I hit my or scrub my timeline here, you can see what's happening as I progress in the timeline. That's going to slide over, and then that's going to fall over as well. So again, I'm working in each timeline, jumping from one object to the other. Now there's going to be several passes here until this kind of becomes how I want it to be. So it's a good time to save your work as well. So I'm going to save. I'm going to save this as my timeline on each object, and then I'll hit this play button. Now that I've saved it, I can kind of take my chances on using the playback button and seeing how the animation is coming into place. Okay, so that's really how you work on each timeline. Make sure that you go back and adjust your little movements in there. Another thing to keep in mind is to work on the top view, the side view, making sure that everything is kind of touching. The trajectories are within how they need to be, and you can see there it stops before, so I may need to go back there and adjust it. Make sure that you do that with each pass until you have that the correct way. After you've kind of ran through your course here and used up all of your seconds on the timeline, you need to render it. Make sure that you render this out as an animation, but also a reminder, make sure that you go to document setup, and if you're using the larger max recommended, you need to hit either standard and render it out at 4:3, 640 by 480, leaving it at 1:1, and then clicking OK. That's going to make it a little bit smaller, and then make sure that you render animation, click on entire duration, edit the output module here, choose Intel, and then OK. Make sure that you set your file location, and in this case I'm going to save it out to the desktop, hit save, and then never render on network. Click OK, and it'll go through the process of rendering. Okay, I wish you much luck. You know, hope you guys can all create something fun and wonderful.